Hey everybody, War Hamster Brady here for another SitRep. We definitely have a situation that needs to be reported going on in Asheville, North Carolina and surrounding parts with our Hurricane Helene and our government's woeful response. Joining me today is one of my best friends in the real world, also goes by the name of the community prepper. And so as you can imagine, he is in Asheville, North Carolina, saw everything firsthand. With a name like channel like the Community Prepper, as you can imagine, he was probably prepared for what happened. But Bill, welcome to the channel.
Thank you very much, Brady. Good to see you.
No, it's a pleasure. It's been too long since we did anything like this, so
Yeah,
we'll get together in person soon enough.
I remember our old days when we would host Doug's Constitution class when he was out, and I'd give my prepper talk, and you'd give your evil banks talks.
Yeah, that's really how I got my start. Is
Yeah.
throwing us up in front. And if you don't know, Bill and I have we've had quite a few adventures together over the years, and we are good friends in real life. But we're not here to talk about us today. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background, and we'll jump into what you've seen.
Okay, so where do I begin? I guess 2013.
How'd you get into prepping?
2013 is when I got into prepping, and it's a unique, fun story. And I was caught flat-footed, like just a lot of people who've never thought about prepping or even thought about storing food or water in their house. And Brady, do you remember the blackout that we had in 2013, where all of Southern California, part of Arizona, even up into Nevada, was blacked out for, I believe, 18 hours?
I do. I was there.
That's what got me into prepping. So I was seeing a girl at the time, and we were down at the beach in good old San Diego, and I was spending the afternoon surfing. Meanwhile, the power was out, and we had no idea. So we get in the car, and we start to head home, and all the lights are off. There's traffic everywhere, and we're just saying, okay, it's a blackout. Well, let's go get some steaks or something and grill them up tonight. And we walk into the Albertsons in Carlsbad, and there are lines down the aisles. There is mayhem. There is people arguing. There was kids running out with beer, and they said it's a blackout, and they're accepting cash only. We opened up our wallets. We had about $18 between us. We went home that night. We cooked up the steaks in the dark on the grill. Our neighbor let us tap into her generator. And I don't think I've ever felt so hopeless after that next day when the lights were not back on. You immediately begin to think, well, we don't have much food. The fridge is out. How much water do we have? Is it safe to drink the tap water? And that's what really introduced me to getting into emergency preparedness, aka prepping. And since then, I have spent a lot of time on University of YouTube and other channels and reading books and getting myself prepared. So when those emergencies happen, better example is the emergency we are currently in, all my preps would fall into place and I would be living more comfortably than suffering with the rest of them. So that's how I got into prepping. And since then,
well, real quick, let me jump in on a couple of things you said right there. First of all, I completely understand. I spent about 10 years of my childhood in Oregon, and about every other year we'd get an ice storm, and these are nasty. They take the power out for 3 to 5 days. You can't drive the roads because of black ice, because you can't see where the ice is. It's pretty bad. My parents were always big into camping, and they were relatively prepared. But after the first one of them, believe me, we were always ready for 3 to 5 days without electricity. The second thing I thought was really interesting was you said how people were behaving in the grocery store aisles, and I think it's something you said to me. What are you, like 1 or 2 missed meals away from losing civilization?
Yeah, the difference between civility and anarchy is 3 meals.
Yeah, we saw it during COVID in Southern Cal, and that you're talking about an 18-hour blackout, 10 years ago, and people are already losing their sanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's quite shocking, and I did see it again. We'll get into it in a little bit, but I did see it again here. Extreme panic buying. Now, going back to COVID, was there ever really a toilet paper shortage, or was it horse before the cart before the horse? Which came first? Was it a shortage, or was it word of a shortage, which created a shortage? So what I saw in San Diego in 2013 was people pushing, shoving, arguing, losing their minds, losing their tempers, letting their emotions get the best of them. And it really brought things into focus about how important having those essential things in your house are, so that the next time we're surfing all day and the power goes out, we go home, we cook our food, and we kick our feet up until it passes. So I got into prepping 2013, and I've expanded my knowledge and my preps tenfold. I'm probably a lot further away where most people are, but just realizing that having that simple 3 weeks of food and water in your home, with maybe some extra batteries or a power source to keep your fridge cold, like a generator, you get that, you're 80% above every American. Most Americans do not keep that stuff in their house.
Yeah, well, after I thought I was prepared 5 years ago before I met Bill. Let me put it this way: I've got a lot more. I'm a lot more ready than I was then, and I'm ahead of most. I was ahead of most Americans. Now I'd say we're ordering more My Patriot Supply this week, and because my fiance is giving me a hard time. She goes, "Are you sure we have enough food?" So, so she's on board too. But you finish up your backstory. Is there anything else more you want to share? And then we'll jump into what you've seen firsthand.
Yeah, sure. So as you might have stated in the intro, I did professional photography and graphic design in San Diego. And then once I got to the level of emergency preparedness, I began attending a meetup group in San Diego and really getting to know a lot of the preppers in that community. And I felt I was in a great position to start kind of instructing and giving talks and prepper talks, and kind of waking people up to the importance of being self-reliant. Because as we've seen here in Asheville, there's nobody coming out to help us. We have a great community that has reached out, but you're basically on your own. Look at Katrina. People were looking for the government for their help. I'm not looking for the government for the help. I want to be self-reliant, and I want to be able to help my community and my neighbors like we did. No one is going to help you. That's the bottom line with prepping. So, being in the position where I am very prepped and I am knowledgeable about it, I can teach people, and I could help my neighbors like we did in this past event. And I'll get to several examples in a little bit of what I did as far as delivering groceries, giving someone antibiotics who had a really nasty infection, a semi-homeless woman that I see downtown a lot. But for those of you who don't know, I do work a part-time armed security job here in Asheville now, and I work downtown, and I have seen and heard some of the worst stories, and I've seen the utter desperation in the people in the town who don't have anything, who've lost a lot but didn't have anything prepared. In the beginning, they're trying to get into the grocery stores when the grocery stores were closed. They're trying to get into the gas stations to fill their tanks when the gas stations didn't have power to get the gas out of the pumps or up to the pumps. So the panic I saw, it reminded me a lot of the panic I saw in 2013. But I think the good news, or the silver lining for the people around here that are going through it right now, like me in 2013, it'll probably wake them up, and they'll never want to be caught flat-footed like they were, the past 9 days now. And people are still going through it. Most of Asheville does have power restored. Most of Asheville is still without internet, and water, city water and sewer, is completely destroyed, completely turned off. And there's a guy that I talked to whose brother works for Asheville City Water, whatever it's called. And he said the infrastructure is completely trashed. It's going to be weeks or months before they get water flowing again in downtown Asheville. It's a really serious situation.
And we're hearing that some of the surrounding communities got hit even worse. They're harder to get to, and they're getting less help.
Yes. Man, I live in a very rural area. Outside of Asheville, you go outside of Asheville 10 miles, you're in the woods, you're in the wilderness, you're in the mountains, you're with the bears and the deer and everything. It's very remote in a lot of these areas. And there are a lot of people who move here to get away, to get off grid, to get up in the mountains and buy land. And a lot of those people are still shut off, because when this storm came through, last Thursday night, we got 24 to 36 hours of the most torrential downpour rain I've ever experienced in my life.
Do you have any footage of that?
What?
Did you get any footage of that?
Yes, I do. Let me send something to my computer real quick, and I'll show you the very beginnings of the first night it rained. And nobody saw this coming. Nobody in the news or anything was like, we got a record rainfall coming. We have all this, mess coming. And I'm going to share my screen with you once this airdrop goes through. And the rain in my yard, I mean, we don't even live in a flood zone where my immediate home is. And I've never seen rain like this. It was dumping. We had a mudslide coming down our back, in the back hill behind our house, and the streets were just brown with mud. The little lake that we have down here with the little stream going through it was just raging, and it was like nothing I've ever seen. So let me share my screen with you.
Yeah, I've seen downpours like that for 4 hours tops when I'm in the Caribbean. Some of the trips I've taken, it rains hard, but we're not talking for 12 to 18 hours straight.
Right.
That's more than it. Just I don't think there's a modern drainage system in the world that can handle the amount of water you guys got. You also said something. Nobody was telling you. Nobody thought it was going to be this bad.
No.
Everyone was tracking it.
I'll get to why it was so bad after I show this clip of rain. I'm going to share this right now. All right. And then this was my street in my backyard. I mean, I've lived here a year and a half. We haven't experienced anything like this. And this was the beginning of it. At this point right here, we didn't know how bad it was going to get. I mean, that's never flowed like that. That's a little drainage from the sewers that goes down to the pond in the little gully there. So, I mean, it was insane. So what happened? The long and the short of it is this. The first 24 to 36 hours, we got, don't quote me on this, something like 14 or 15 inches of rainfall. That night, the wind started blowing. Now, the wind blows here a lot. We get some windy gusts. We get 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds in most of our storms. And, you'll see branches down the next day, nothing major. Because the ground was so saturated, 150-year-old trees were just blown over like dominoes. There was very few snap branches or trees that were broken, split down the middle. Every tree I saw was on the ground, roots up. Now, what that caused was every single, and I'm not exaggerating, every single power line within a radius of my house was down. Every single one. Power went out, and we weren't even able to leave my immediate development for about a day because of the amount of trees that were down.
Yeah, they're blocking the roadway and everything, I would imagine.
Blocking the roadway, they were completely inaccessible to go anywhere. And that's when the community really started to kick in, because fire and emergency services, they were tied up with just about everything. Citizens were coming out with chainsaws, cutting these massive trees, tying a tow rope to them and pulling them away with the truck. So it's kind of a weird atmosphere driving down a road where it was just the road and just a cut trees on side, like a laser beam just shot down the road and cleared everything. It was quite a surreal experience. But initially,
when did your power go out?
Let me see. I have a little timeline here. Let me refer to my phone here. So all right. So Friday, September 25th is when the rain started. That was the video I just showed. 24 to 36 hours. It didn't let up. Midnight, right at the stroke of midnight into the 27th is when our power cut out. And we were without power for 6 days. So the power cut, the wind came up. Wasn't anything extravagant with the wind, nothing out of the norm for this area. And the next day it looked like a war zone. So we lost power. The weird thing was, and I still didn't get any answers to this, is cell service was on. Cell service was on until 3 p.m. that day, and then it was just cut. Everyone lost cell service. I don't know what happened. I don't know what would cause that. For cell service to be up after the worst of it, and then all of a sudden, it was almost like they flipped a switch. I'm not going to get into any conspiracy theories or anything like that, but it was very odd that the worst of it was behind us, and then cell service went down.
Okay, so
And cell service...
without cell service, are you getting any information, or how are you getting it?
Okay, so being a prepper, I do have an emergency radio, and I do have a Baofeng radio. It's basically a ham radio. So I have those pre-programmed to get any emergency weather reports and emergency things in the city or area. So we were listening to them for several hours, and it was just reporting. I don't think anyone knew right away, but the next day, a local radio station here, it was actually an FM station that I can tune to on my little, weather radio. They were doing updates at, I believe, 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And that's when we really got to hear how bad everything was. There's a town next to us called Chimney Rock. And Chimney Rock has a very nice lake attached to it called Lake Lure. Chimney Rock, Brady, is where one of your favorite movies was filmed, Last of the Mohicans. And for you 80s kids, it's also where Dirty Dancing was filmed. Chimney Rock and Lake Lure are gone. They're like they never existed. They're off the map right now. The entire lake of Lake Lure is nothing but logs and mud and collapsed houses and piers and boats just in a stew. The town of Chimney Rock was flooded by the river that flows into Lake Lure, and it's complete loss, complete devastation. It's going to take years to rebuild that.
If you want to start showing some footage as you're going through this, feel free anytime.
Yeah, sure. Let me see what I got here.
The Baofeng radio he's talking about, I spent I think it was $89 3 years ago to get one, and you can probably learn how to use it in a 20-minute class on the University of YouTube.
Yes, exactly. And the key is to know how to pre-program it, because out of the box, you're just going to be scanning channels and not getting anything of any use, because it is so it covers such a wide area. You need something that's really keyed into your area. So let me explain to you what I did the first day while I'm sending some of these photos to myself. But the first day, when we could get out, which was 2 days after the initial storm, we went to a store called Publix. Publix is our local grocery store chain here. And I just wanted to document what happened, and what I actually have a video of Publix, and I'm gonna upload it to you guys now. But it was, here we go. I'm gonna send it to myself. It was mayhem in the store. Again, it was lines around the corner, people completely panic buying, and boy, here, I'll show you. Let me pull this up. Let me share my screen. Share my screen again.
While you're doing that, I was texting Bill Saturday morning, and he did not get back to me until I think Monday afternoon. Kind of figured there's something going on with the cell service, but yeah.
Yeah. So this was when I walked in the door, what I saw. And I'll put the volume up a little bit. But lines around the corner, taking cash only, people panic buying. And this was only the second day, and I would estimate that not even a quarter of those people knew the extent of what we were going through at that time. And we didn't get news of, Black Mountain and any of the news of Chimney Rock or Swannanoa or any of these other towns that got hit so hard and are completely devastated. I'm uploading a video now, I'll show you in a second, of me in the grocery store doing a little bit of narration about what I'm seeing. And again, it was a repeat from 2013. It was just people reacting badly to a very stressful situation. I'll wait for that to upload. It's taking its sweet time. But
when do you first become aware that FEMA isn't doing a darn thing to help anyone?
when I started looking for them, when I was able to go down to downtown Asheville and I started filming some footage for my YouTube channel that I'll be putting out a whole video of all this soon. I was looking at who was volunteering. I was looking at who was in the streets feeding people, who was giving out clothing, diapers, medicine, all that. And apart from the city of Asheville, that set up a water truck at about day 3, every single person there was a private citizen or a business owner or someone that came in from out of town with a church group or something of the like to help the citizens. I did not see, I heard FEMA was here. I heard the National Guard was here. I talked to several APD, Asheville Police Department employees, cops, firefighters. I said, have you guys seen FEMA? Have you guys seen any federal assistance? They all said no. Everyone I talked to said, I heard FEMA's here at this school. I heard FEMA's over here. I tried to verify it. I could not find FEMA anywhere. Today is the first day, 9 days after it happened, that I saw 2 women walking down the street wearing FEMA shirts. They weren't doing anything. They were walking down the street. They were wearing shirts that said FEMA. That is the only sign of FEMA that I have seen with my own eyes in the city.
And Asheville is basically the largest town, and of all the areas that get hit, Asheville is pretty close to the epicenter and the biggest one. If you were going to see them anywhere, it would be Asheville.
Asheville is the largest town in western North Carolina.
Okay. So I'm on a text thread with a lot of people, influencers in the conservative movement, et cetera. And you'll know a lot of the names, but a couple of them are leading rescue organizations or efforts on the ground near you.
Mm-hmm.
They're working through churches for the most part. They're saying a few things. First of all, do not trust the Give, Send, Goes and the GoFundMes that are out there. Give the money directly to people that are on the ground. Do not send it to an organization whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Mayorkas was out saying that not long ago saying FEMA's out of money while they have their hands for 9 days. I want to share something with you just to really get the anger going. I ripped this little pic off of Dan Bongino's show.
Okay, probably seen it.
Here we have FEMA announces $380 million in additional funding for migrants.
Yes.
Here's FEMA, $77 million for receiving migrants.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Department of Homeland Security announcing distribution of another $12 million in funding. FEMA awards $110 million to the emergency food and shelter programs to assist migrants. New York City to get $104 million for FEMA from asylum seekers. We have Department of Homeland Security, $300 million for direct funding to communities receiving migrants, and another $340 million for a new competitive awards process, whatever the heck that means. We know they're sending money to the Ukraine. They're bragging about sending money to the Lebanese. Kamala's on the campaign trail bragging that they're sending $160 million to Lebanon to help the people there, but nothing for the people of the United States near Asheville. It's infuriating. And we're actually hearing, Bill, and I don't know if you can collaborate this, but FEMA is confiscating some of the supplies that have been brought in from individuals. Mm-hmm. They're just taking it over, and now that nothing's getting distributed because it's all, got to go through bureaucratic red tape.
Right. Let's go down this rabbit hole for a second. I've heard stories. Some of them are confirmed. One in particular was a private helicopter pilot trying to deliver supplies to people who were up in the mountainside that couldn't get down. And I don't know what local fire chief around here, I don't believe it was the city of Asheville. I believe it might have been, I don't want to misspeak. It was a very close town to here. Told the pilot that if he took off again, he would be arrested. I also saw a video in South Carolina where they were using an airport to fly product and supplies into Asheville Airport, which is open, despite what I heard Biden say. We have been open since the beginning of all this. Asheville Airport has been open since the very first day. I did hear him say, there's no way to deliver supplies. They were flying supplies out of, I believe, Greenville, South Carolina. And there's a guy who's on the runway saying, all of these helicopters just landed on the runway, blocking passage of planes taking off, and every single pilot got out identified as a FEMA pilot. Take that with a grain of salt, I guess, but it was reported, and I did watch the video. I don't know if you saw that video, but that's something that I wouldn't have believed 10 years ago. I wouldn't have believed that our own government was, maybe I was naive, maybe it's always been that way, but our own government working against us, creating orchestrated chaos, so to speak. And if you want to go further down that rabbit hole, maybe they're creating this orchestrated chaos to maybe just grant us a little bit more safety if we just give up a little bit more rights. I mean, maybe somebody said that in our history. You know, I think it's you deserve neither. Some quote like that. One of those old guys. But yes, 2024 is a lot different than 2014, and I do not doubt. I mean, what is the difference between a conspiracy theory and a fact? What do they say? 3 months or something like that? How's the saying go?
Getting shorter all the time.
They've been right. They've been right on so many different conspiracy theories since COVID, and now we're living through one of the worst disasters this region has ever seen, and we have no help from anyone but local charities and local groups. And I'm still waiting for my $750 to, put all the pieces back together.
Yeah, that's a bit of an insult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So here's my grocery store video of everyone going crazy. And I do a little narration here, so it's pretty good. Check this out.
Okay, so here in North Carolina, we just had a hurricane come through, and we happened to go down to the local grocery store, and it is absolutely pandemonium here. People panic buying and getting the things that they should have already in their houses. I'm not here to gloat at all, because most people, I understand, do not prepare for a minor event, never mind a major event. But here in North Carolina, we had the hurricane, and it is absolute devastation. I've never seen such trees ripped up, power lines down, just absolute craziness. And it's going to take weeks to get this back up and running. See. So right now I have my generator running at home. I have just my freezer and refrigerator plugged in, just the necessities, but I got all the power banks and stuff, so I'm sitting in a good position. I'm not worried at all, but I can see the look of panic on some of these people's faces, and it's a shame that they don't think a little bit ahead to prepare better. But it did take me the blackout in California of 2013 to start preparing. So I've been preparing a prepper for 11 years now, and hopefully maybe it turns some of these people's heads around. But I'm going to film some stuff in the store to show you this video.
So it really was panic in people's eyes, because nobody knew the extent of what was going on. Nobody knew that the power was going to be off for 6 days in that grocery store in that area. Now, that grocery store was 100% on generators. The grocery store across the street, no generators. They lost everything. They threw up thousands and thousands of dollars of meats and frozen refrigerated goods. So, like I said in the video, I didn't want to gloat. I just wanted to show where people are now versus, I think everyone in the people in that store will rethink their stocks in their fridges and in their water supplies and in their shelves for another future event like this. This is the black swan event that will kick off a lot of these people to start preparing for emergencies.
One would hope.
Yes. I mean, what I've learned in trying to teach people about prepping and talk to people prepping, and you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. I mean, I've talked to people so many times about the first thing about prepping is you want to get water. Water's the most important thing. You can only live 3 days without it. And when you get desperate, you'll start drinking contaminated water, which will make you sick, lead to further dehydration. You don't drink water for three days, your blood pressure drops, your organs fail, and you die. Simple as that. A lot of people say, well, I got all the guns and ammo and all that stuff. That's just part of the equation. I'm a gun guy, all right? I got guns. But you can't drink guns. You can't eat guns. Guns is down the line. That's after 3 days. That's when people really start getting panicked that you might need to use weapons to defend yourself and your home and your family.
Well, let me jump in there because I think we want to close the show with like you giving like 8 steps that people can do to get prepped. Or
Yep.
it doesn't have to be 8. You can pick your number, but
Okay.
well, I want to have you finish walking through your experience first, and then we'll jump into what everyone should be doing, like yesterday.
Okay.
Like yesterday.
All right. So immediately when the power went out, I went in the garage and I got my generator. Now, the generator I have, it's a Furman generator. It's a beast. It's 1400 watt seconds. It'll power half the things in your house. But what I did was I didn't want to lose all my frozen food because I have the chest freezer and I have the refrigerator here. So I ran the generator an hour on, 4 hours off, and that kept the food cold enough so it didn't thaw, and it also kept the fuel going for the generator. It is a propane, gasoline, and natural gas generator. It's called a tri-fuel generator. I ran it completely on propane, and part of prepping is I did have that fuel in my garage. I have 7 or 8 propane tanks full. I only went through 5 of them in 6 days, so that was a pretty good I think, stretching out my supply. And even with all that propane and the lights not turning on yet, I still got a little nervous because gasoline was also scarce. All the gas stations were down. All the gas stations, when they did open, had an immediate line and had a limited supply. I'll tell you a funny story. I think beer saved the day for me one day. Now, I always fill my car tank at half a tank. Half a tank is empty. So when this whole thing started, I was at a full tank, but I was driving to and from work every day. I didn't miss work because I do the security job and they needed me there and I needed to be there. But once the gas tank started going down, I began to say, okay, when is the end in sight? So I got thirsty one night. Then I went out to the local gas station here to get a beer. And as I'm sitting in my car about to pull out, I see the gas truck pulling in. The gas truck pulled in, and I immediately pulled into one of the spots. And by that time that guy got out of the door of his gas truck, there was a line of 50 cars, of 100 cars, of 150 cars. I called some of my friends that lived in the area, and we lucked out. We were able to fill the gas tank. I'm going to show you a quick video right now of what that mess looks like at 2 different gas stations. And let me pull it up. I'll share my screen with you guys. So this is the first video. And if you're without gas for almost a week and you see this, I can't stress how beautiful this situation was.
Man, I know it's not a big deal, but after having no gas, people are desperate. I was just in the right place at the right time. Have you ever seen something so beautiful? Now,
yeah, the mundane of a guy hooking up a thing. So this was one of the gas lines I drove by. People were on the side of the road, broken down, or not broken down, but on the side of the freeway. There were cars everywhere. The people just rode their tanks dry. And I got one more to show you, and then I'm going to tell you a funny story. Not a funny story, but now this is another
gas station that is open.
So this was 309. How's that, California? 309. It's now down to 299. Anyway, gas stations were overrun like that, and then they were out of gas within hours, and then they were shut off for the rest of the day. It was a complete you-know-what show. One story that I saw several times, I saw several people running their gas tanks dry, charging their phones. I heard stories of people using bottled drinking water to dump in the top tanks of their toilets to flush them. 2 of the resources that we need most when you could die of thirst because we are still in a boil orders for tap water here. And charging a phone, the cell service wasn't even up, and people were running their tanks dry, charging their tablets and their phones. It's bewildering to me that someone would put themselves in that situation. But again, that's what the unprepared, that's what the panicked do. They do things that are outside of their normalcy bias. Everybody has a normalcy bias here of they will wake up in the morning, their coffee maker will be on, they'll go to work, they'll have plenty of gas and food. Everybody's normalcy bias was shattered in this storm. And as I stated before, man, they need to wake up and start prepping. Think outside of your normalcy bias. It's dangerous to have a normalcy bias in life.
One of the things that gets me, Bill, is that you live in a somewhat rural area where there are a lot of people who are used to living off the land to a much greater extent. Can you imagine what happens in a real disaster in a city or even the suburbs? People are less prepared, and the goods and services that are available go a lot faster because you're surrounded by a whole lot of people.
Yes, I said to many people, the funny thing is I had to leave Southern California to the mountains of Western North Carolina to experience the worst natural disaster of my life. We've had earthquakes, fires, mudslides, droughts in California. Nothing in California was ever as bad as this. If this were to happen in a populated area, it would have been 1,000 times worse. People, for the most part here, they were panicked, but it didn't turn into looting. It didn't turn into smashing store windows. Now, it did happen here. It wasn't widespread. It was stupid. They looted the Spirit Halloween store. I don't know why you need a mask in a hurricane.
Brilliant.
But I think there were some crimes of opportunity that people partook in. But overall, I work in downtown Asheville. I'm an armed security guard. I work retail in a high theft, high crime area. 99% of the people were very patient, were very kind, were very giving and helping other people. I mean, I saw people who didn't have ice, and we ran out of ice, and they gave another family a bag of ice from their 2 bags just to spread it. I've seen a lot of really kind acts in the last week and a half or 9 days. Fortunately, I haven't seen a lot of ugliness. But going back to what you said, this would not have gone down like this in a bigger city, in a bigger metropolis area. I'm thinking San Diego, New York, any populated area, Los Angeles, where everyone is so tight together. Supplies would run out, like you said, 10 times faster. The thing about grocery stores is there's no stock rooms in grocery stores anymore. It's what's called just-in-time delivery.
Yeah, the supply chains already, we saw that happen during COVID, and
right.
There was no reason for it to be panicking then.
Right. But I mean, the supply in a grocery store is what you see on the shelves. There are no soup cans in the back. There is no vegetables in the back. They get several trucks a day that deliver groceries. A lot of the grocery stores around here, when they could open, ran out very fast because we were so isolated. The roads were blocked. Part of Interstate 40 and the Tennessee-North Carolina border completely collapsed and gave way, making a major thoroughfare completely inaccessible to outside trucks. I mean, 40 is one of the major routes that goes east to west across the country. We were cut off from the world temporarily, and those grocery stores that couldn't get that just-in-time delivery went dry in a matter of days. Now, the population in Asheville city is roughly 95,000. I think Carlsbad, California, where I used to live in, is 115,000. So that just puts things in perspective of the tiny town that we live in compared to where I moved from, and how much worse it would have been in a metropolis. And if I were in San Diego or a big city and something like this would happen, you don't leave your house. You close the doors, you lock the doors, and you live off your preps as long as you can, because the last thing you want to do is open yourself to the second biggest threat once the initial threat passes, and that's other people. The hurricane, you survive that. The earthquake, you survive that. Whatever it is, people will become the biggest threat. You get someone scared enough, hungry, scared enough, you could force a vaccine on them. You get somebody scared enough, you could do a lot. They become savage. They'll become desperate.
We were hearing some anecdotal stories. Some people doing, Instagrams and stuff like that. I can't say this is definitive, but we were hearing one woman came on and early on and said she talked to her local sheriff. They were recommending everybody not just concealed carry, but open carry. They did have some examples of people looting. And, we know that there are people not supposed to be in this country that are all over the place. I'm sure that had something to do with it, but like I said, I'm not going to say that verbatim because we don't have any hardcore proof of that yet. But yeah, it is something. You're making a really important point. And when people get desperate, their civility or civilization leaves them really, really quick.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do if you're a father, a normal father, even a church-going father? You got a wife and 3 kids, and your kids are looking at you after 2 days of not drinking water. What would you do to get your kids water? I mean, you can ask your neighbors nicely, but you're only going to ask them nicely a few times. It could turn people savage. You scare somebody enough, you make them feel desperate enough, and they panic. Your best friend, neighbor, someone you've seen for the last 10 years says, I'm kicking in your door to feed my kids. So people will become savage in desperate times.
Yeah. Hope we don't have to see too much more of that. What else? More observations. You got a bunch of good stuff, so keep going.
Yeah. So let's touch on something that yesterday really hit home. It was day 8 yesterday, and I picked up a security detail, an assignment. I'm not going to name the town. I'm not going to name the place because it is kind of a touchy subject. And I am monitoring a property in a neighboring town of Asheville, we'll say 4 miles away. And their river there, not the French Broad River is the one that goes through Asheville, another river that feeds into the French Broad, swelled, broke its banks, and completely washed away an entire mobile home park. I don't have a count on the amount of mobile homes, but it was a large lot because I saw the bare lot yesterday. Now, the property hired security because they were having some of the mobile homeowners and looters trying to get into the mobile homes. From what I heard, they were in a 500-year flood zone, meaning there hasn't been a flood here in probably recorded history in the United States. They were giving no warning, and there are people that are still in those mobile homes, dead, pushed up against the woods line on the banks of the river. The banks of the river are on the property that I'm monitoring, and they found 8 bodies so far. Yesterday, when I was there at work, they located 2 more. They had cadaver dogs out on the property, and they hit on 2 other places. Now, we were assisting the search and rescue by walking the property and unfortunately smelling decomposition. And then they would bring in the dog, and the dog would hit on it. And yes, it was a human remains. They can differentiate between human remains, animal remains, even rotting food in a refrigerator. So
we're hearing from the government that the death toll, I don't know, rose to what, 180 over the weekend? Is that that's nowhere?
That's nowhere accurate. They're not even counting the people who are homeless. We have a huge transient community here in Asheville. Asheville has changed a lot in the last 3 years since COVID started, and I've heard the homeless population is through the roof compared to what it used to be. Now, in this particular area I'm describing, there was an entire colony group, whatever have you, of homeless people that lived. They were bridge people. They lived under the bridge in this town. They're unheard. They're not even counting people that don't have IDs and homes and things like that. I think the death toll will be 10 times higher than they're reporting right now, especially with the amount of missing people that are reported versus the dead. Now, missing people, we have cell service now. Missing people was a concern 5 days ago when the cell towers were still ground and mom couldn't get in touch with dad, or brother couldn't get in touch with sister or husband and wife. I think that has subsided now because everyone that I've spoken to and talked to has cell service. Those people I think are accounted for. If they're still missing, unfortunately, it's a search, not a rescue. So I want to show you guys real quick the property I was on yesterday when the search and rescue team did show up. And I've never seen cadaver dogs in action, but this is a quick video here. These are people just walking the banks of the river. And, well, the dog just thinks it's a game, but it was doing some serious work and hopefully starting the process of families finding closure.
Are those local authorities, or are these the feds coming in finally?
They were local authorities. I believe they were with the sheriff's department in Buncombe County. And this is also some of the wreckage that is on the property I am monitoring. And unfortunately, it's piles like these where we're finding bodies.
Now, an RV weighs what, 4,000 or 5,000? You know, how many tons does an RV weigh?
Yeah, I mean, how many count? It's like toys. It's amazing the force of what water can do to metal, and I mean, this is when it hit home for me because I hadn't seen death firsthand in the storm, and yesterday I saw it.
And smelled it too, apparently.
Yes, when things
like fun.
When things happen and you see them on the news, it's somebody else. It's happening to somebody else, you know? When you're there on the ground and you really are experiencing it, things look a lot different from the ground than from the air and helicopters, and things are a lot different when you're experiencing them and you're hearing stories about people you know's family has lost their house or they're missing or whatever. But these images here it's just, I don't even think this does it justice, but I mean, people were given no notice. They were in their beds getting swept away and losing their lives very violently.
Well, we haven't heard enough talk by people who actually understand this stuff. At least I haven't. But how did the forecasters miss this one so badly?
There was no warning. I mean, the rivers around here, the river that you just saw, the one, it's the Swannanoa River, and it extends all the way through western North Carolina and empties in the French Broad River. Now, that river floods every time we have a major rain. A major rain here is 1, 2, 3 inches, not in the teens or low 20s in inches. People that were in 500-year flood zones, even 100-year flood zones, they went to bed that night having no idea how much actual rain was going to fall. The forecasters don't do it. The forecasters didn't see this coming. Nobody said we're going to get 20 inches of rain. If you're anywhere remotely near a body of water, get out. These people in this trailer park had 5 minutes of warning before they were swept away.
Yeah, there's not going to be any place for them to go. You can't get in your car if you have one and it even has gas and get someplace. You can't outrun it.
No, you can't. But they didn't even think that they were in the flood zone because that's never flooded in anyone's lifetime who is alive today, where they are.
Well, I know the Hurricane Helene originally was not, when we first start to build off the water, it wasn't necessarily targeted at where you are. And it changed course. Like
right.
12 to 24 hours before, if I'm remembering that right.
Yep.
But they still didn't get the magnitude of water that would come.
No, I've seen these things with this number of trillions of gallons of water that dropped. I can't even wrap my head around trillions and 40 trillion gallons of water. I've never seen rain like this in my entire life. I grew up in New Jersey. We had storms. We had hurricanes that came through. Sandy came through. I wasn't there for Sandy. I lived in Myrtle Beach for a while. We had a couple of hurricanes come through. It rained. It was windy. This rain doesn't fall like this. go down whatever conspiracy thing you want to, but I've never seen rain like this with no break in it for a day and a half.
Well, that's why we have to stop climate change, Bill. Not
Well,
kidding.
Brady, if they can't predict tomorrow's rain, how are they going to predict 10 years from now's climate?
I have to pull up the chart that shows that the frequency and strength of hurricanes is actually trending down since 1930s.
Yeah, didn't last year? I think last year was one of the slowest hurricane seasons we had.
Yeah. Well, hey, are you suggesting it might be cyclical?
Maybe everything's cyclical. Maybe we'll head into the next ice age before we head into the next global warming phase. I mean, in the 70s, weren't they worried about an ice age?
Yeah, it was global cooling. It was on the cover of Time magazine. Interestingly enough, the solution to global cooling is the exact same solution as there is for global warming. More government, more global governance.
Well, Brady, do you know why China and Russia don't push their climate agenda?
Because they were too busy sending money to our green machine, people out there protesting in the 17s and 80s.
It's because they're already communist.
Well, it's a good. We're not going into jokes today. I was going to say I might let you do a dad joke at the end, but
all right, I'll do a nice dad joke.
So just so you guys know, when Bill and I first started to get to know each other, it turns out he's one of the few people I've met that has a deeper repertoire of really bad jokes than I do. So over a beer.
Yes, I usually say when someone says, "Hey, I heard you're the joke guy, tell me a joke," I say, "You pick the topic," because I ain't going right hardcore. You want dad jokes? Fine. But hey, if you can't laugh at everyone, if you can't laugh at yourself, comedy should be untouchable, No hate behind it. It should be funny.
Did you hear that over the weekend, Saturday? Well, you've probably been busy. Saturday Night Live actually made fun of Tim Walz and Kamala Harris again.
Really? Was the FBI at their door the next day?
Apparently not, because it's the second time they've done it.
Wow.
Something gives. Another interesting thing is, I follow, I track all the political polls, but I also track the betting markets.
Yeah.
The change in the last 3 days from from Kamala to Trump is, in fact, I just have to pull that up. And it's really just happened in the last 24 to 48 hours. Yeah, let me pull this up real quick. You see that okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
This is just basically since this morning, Trump spiking up. But if we go back to like the last week, Trump went from behind, and now he's taking a lead in the betting markets. Now, I like the betting markets more than I like the polls because polls are a lagging indicator, and people in the betting markets actually have skin in the game. They're not just answering a phone call. That being said, you take them all with a grain of salt. Polls are garbage. Most of them, there's very few that are done correctly from a statistical basis.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on the numbers, but you can rely on the trend. They do show trends, and right now the betting markets are clearly showing, and I suspect it's something that's just happened in the last 24 to 48 hours across the markets. A lot of it has to do with this failed response of the federal government. Kamala won't even talk about these victims.
Yeah.
Let me read this one to you. This is from that signal thread, and this is actually from a woman who's on the ground.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm supposed to use her name, so I won't.
All right.
Christy, you can let me know if you watch this, whether I should have added that. She goes, over 500 soldiers, this is from yesterday, 500 soldiers with the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault are now heading to assist in Hurricane Helene. They are part of Task Force Falcon. They headed out on Saturday with 60 all-terrain vehicles, trained to perform tasks such as search and rescue, supply distribution, etc. They'll be assisting the North Carolina National Guard and FEMA in their efforts. Well, it sounds great. And my response to that is this would have been nice to hear, 7 days ago.
Yeah.
Where were you? We heard the 82nd Airborne was sitting there ready to deploy, and they were not given the orders.
Weren't we there in a matter of hours when Haiti had that big earthquake?
Oh, yeah.
Why isn't that possible? Oh, and I have a question for you. And this is a serious question. I'm not trying to be coy. I've been working a lot lately, so I haven't watched many of the shows that I normally watch. But is the mainstream media saying that this is Kamala's Katrina at all? Has anyone come out? Because, George Bush, not a fan of him, took a lot of heat over Katrina for his lack of response or slow response to Katrina. Anyone in the media calling out this administration the same way?
Very, very little. And of course, we know one.
Yeah.
you're hearing some of it, but again,
even with those stats that you showed me and the media in their back pocket, the betting markets still have Trump up.
Yeah,
because of this response. That's interesting. That's good news.
The story, this failure by the government, is too big to suppress. Can't be done. They're not going to ignore it away. Especially when you see Kamala up there talking about just the exact opposite. This should be the number one story on everyone's mind: how Americans failed Americans.
Yeah, prioritizing foreign nations as well. For those of you who don't know, Asheville is a very, very blue city. It's a very blue city surrounded by red. I see a lot of Harris support signs, people wearing shirts, and I wonder if their ideology will, maybe they'll second guess themselves. November 5th isn't an election, it's an IQ test after this point. It really is. I mean, how could you see the failures of Harris at the reins? I mean, Biden's on the beach. He's suntanning, right? He was tanning all this, I heard. Biden, Harris failed us in this emergency, and I do think people are waking up. I think the people who are the Harris supporters, honestly, I think they might be second guessing. And I don't think they're not going to vote for Trump. I think they might stay home. I think in this area, especially solid blue Asheville, I think we have a lot of voters now that are just going to stay home on November 5th and say this was the straw because they were directly affected.
Yeah, that doesn't even mention how hard is it going to be for North Carolina and surrounding areas to get their voting infrastructure back up? How many mail-in ballots that I know you guys already started voting in some areas? How many of them just disappeared and will never be without a trace?
Well, I mean, I think this is going to have a huge effect on the way people vote or don't vote on November 5th. I think this might be the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of indecisive voters, independent voters, to see the failures that have happened at the federal level.
And my hope is that we're able to make it sure that they know where the failure came from. This is the problem with when you centralize everything and the government's in charge of everything out of DC, everything will be politicized. Everything.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. You need to realize the government failed you because that's what governments are going to do. Government's only good at two things: collecting money and fighting wars.
Yeah.
Everything else like that, it's much better done locally and decentralized.
And I spoke with a woman who I know, and she is a New York Democrat in her 60s, and she fawns over Obama and Michelle and Barack Obama, and does not like Trump, and was talking about Harris, and she was asking where FEMA was the other day. She does not. She's one of these. Like many Americans who, unlike you and I, don't have our ear to the grindstone when it comes to, political, national and global events. A lot of people, they just, they have most Americans, I believe, have their daily routine, their daily activities. Politics don't even enter their mind. They just know Trump bad, Republicans evil, Republicans racist, the party of the rich, Democrats are the party of the people, the working man. Because that's what they've been told their whole lives.
So these are people that are stuck inside the information bubble. And what you're suggesting is that this is getting through.
It is getting through because the more people I talk to, and the more, like this woman in particular, I was talking to her about FEMA, and she's like, "Why isn't there aid here? Should I apply for the $750?" I said yes, and I said, "You know why FEMA isn't here? You know why they're not here?" And she's like, "Why?" And I said, "They don't have funds." And she's like, "How do they not have funds?" And I said, "All of the funds have been diverted to help our newcomers resettle." And that shocked her. She had no idea, like probably a lot of people had no idea of the billions and billions of dollars we are spending on non-American citizens and foreign countries. Our tax dollars should go to Americans, not these foreigners, not these nations that don't even like us, corrupt nations that I can't even find on a map in Eastern Europe.
The reason that happens, and this is just because you're teeing me up for the topic I've been talking about on some of my other shows and stuff like that, is time and time again, our USAID sends out quote unquote foreign aid, and that money gets laundered through the corrupt people in the home country. Happens every single time. It happened in Ukraine with Ihor Kolomoisky. They
Mhm.
took his bank away for the love of God and still let his puppet become president.
Yeah.
Been a guy by the name of Zelensky. But it happens. You think the Lebanese money is going to go straight to the people? It
No.
never happens. None of
No.
that aid goes straight through. It is a way of buying favors in the country. And that's what our State Department has been doing since World War II.
Yeah.
That's where your money's going.
And like prepping politics, I like to educate people who don't know where to start in politics, who don't know where to start in prepping. This woman is just a Democrat voter. She votes a solid Democrat ticket. Now, me just saying that FEMA's not here for X, Y, and Z, and do you know our administration's doing this, and we're sending foreign money to foreign countries, and the banks run dry to help its own citizens. It opened her eyes. And she said, can you send me some websites or some news sites where you get this information from? So I don't think she's quite red-pilled yet, but the more we talk to people, you and I and our friends in our group, we can enlighten people one at a time. And that's my goal when it came to prepping, was to just change one person's life at a time and get them ready, get them prepared in their home for their family when stuff goes bad, like we're experiencing right now here in Asheville. So education is key. And sometimes people are very open to hearing your knowledge and hearing my knowledge on topics they know nothing about.
Yeah, it's hard. You got to find the opening, and sometimes, sadly, sometimes it takes a catastrophe for people to wake up and start asking questions. But once you start asking them, make sure the right answer is there for you.
Yeah.
Unless you have anything else to share about on the ground, any observations that we haven't gone through, if you want to go through those, then you can jump. When you're done with that, we'll just jump into prepping 101 with the community.
Perfect. Yep. So I think it's going to take years to recover here. Complete towns are gone, especially some of the bigger tourist areas. We have an area in Asheville called Biltmore Village. We have an area in Asheville called the River Arts District. Lake Lure, which I mentioned before, very highly traveled tourist areas, and they are decimated. They are going to take a lot of time to come back. And unfortunately, this being such a flood of such magnitude, lots of the places that were flooded out aren't required to have flood insurance. 500-year flood zone, 100-year flood zone, these people have lost everything and they're not going to get it recouped. It's going to take a long time. Now, on a personal note, I am currently looking for property and a house here in Asheville. I've been renting for the year and 8 months I've lived here. And it's opened my eyes to a few things that I want and don't want because of this tragedy. And property values here, I don't know what is going to happen. I think people who are wanting to sell are going to be more motivated to sell. And I think it's going to keep people from buying here for a little bit because of just the amount of destruction that was done. But
I can't imagine if you're trying to sell, if you're not going to get anything near fair market value of what it was a month ago.
Exactly. And this area has saw a massive influx of people who moved here in 2020, 2021, 2022 from New York, New Jersey, Washington State, California. We got a lot of them. Texas got a lot of them. Florida got a lot of them. The pattern there. And people were in bidding wars, and housing prices went through the roof in this area. Now it's resettled a little bit, and the prices are, starting to come down. I think I might be in a very good position to purchase something that might have been outside of my price range a month or a week ago. That's my prediction. My real estate agent, I think, agrees with me on that. But yes, we do want to not have city lines coming into our house with sewer or water. We want well water and septic. We want a gas stove. Behind me is a gas stove. That thing saved our butts because we didn't have electricity, but we could still cook. So that is definitely a requirement in someone who's maybe looking to get a little bit more prepared and a little bit more off grid.
Weren't we told we ought to get rid of our gas stoves to save the climate?
Well, I think they also want us in 15-minute cities with a electronic currency and electric cars. So when Brady buys one too many bullets next month, they flick off his bank account. It's all about control. So yeah, but yeah, let me talk to your viewers about basically how to start getting prepared. And to plug my own channel here, I do have a YouTube channel, Community Prepper, and I guess the best video you can start off with is called The Pillars of Prepping. And the Pillars of Prepping will spell out every main point, or like there's food, there's shelter, there's water, there's firearms, there's medical, list goes on. But you want to initially start prepping with 3 weeks of food and water in your home. That is the most important thing you could do right now. And like I said earlier, that will set you ahead of 80-90% of US citizens who don't even have 2 days worth of food in their home.
Okay, so let's talk about water first.
Right.
Does it just mean if I'm going to do 2 bottles of water a week?
Mm-hmm. We'll start with water. Water is, the rule of thumb is 1 gallon of water per person per day. If you have 4 people in your house, that's 4 bottles a day, gallons a day. What is that? 28 gallons for the week. So you can start by putting aside a little pantry in an area. It could be a closet. You're going to get enough water for your food for your family. Now, water right off the shelf in those cheap little bottles at the grocery store is fine. They do sort of have an expiration date on them. If you drink bottled water regularly, you want to rotate your stock. If you've ever worked in the restaurant industry or the grocery store industry, your oldest stock is selling first. So you're going to technically be drinking the first bottle of water that you bought first.
Replacing it with a new
one. And then you're going to be replacing it on your next trip.
How about storage? Can it just go on the floor?
You'd want to bring your water bottles off the floor, off of cement. You can put them on wooden planks. That is the smartest thing to do. Those water bottles will absorb things from the ground. They are porous, believe it or not. And having them off the ground would keep your water a little bit fresher, and it'll stay stabler a little bit more. Now, water bottles, I wouldn't keep them for more than a year at a time. But drink what you buy what you drink. Same thing with food. When you buy food, you're going to buy food that you normally eat. You're not going to buy 30 cans of Spam. You're not going to buy things that you normally eat. You're going to buy your basics. You're going to buy your pastas, your pasta sauces, your pancake mix, your things that are shelf stable that you can use in a pinch.
Non-perishables is really what you're looking at.
Non-perishables. You can't really stockpile eggs and milk. Butter you can freeze. Some things you can freeze. You could always get powdered milk. I did hear a story about a woman that was trying an experiment with powdered milk on her husband and brought her husband a glass of cold powdered milk, and he drank it and didn't even question it tasting funny or anything. But there are ways around it. You can make oat milk. It's a very easy recipe to make. If it's nice and creamy, great with cereal, great in coffee if you like milk. And that's something that's just basically oats, milk, and maybe a little bit of maple syrup.
Wait, let's go back before we go deeper into food. We skipped over water filtration systems. And
water filtration.
That's a big one for me.
During this emergency that we just went by, now I have roughly 100 gallons of fresh water stored in those 5-gallon jug water bottles. Upstairs, we have a home office, and we're drinking that water constantly. Every time we finish a bottle, we put it in the car to go fill it up at the water station the next time, and we take the next bottle. So we're rotating through that stock. We easily get through those 5-gallon jugs, 10 of those 5-gallon jugs, 15 of those 5-gallon jugs within a year time, no problem. As far as collecting water, a great way to collect water is to get a rain barrel. Now, a rain barrel, you can connect to the downspouts in your gutter. And depending on the area of your country you're in, you get rain quite often. Might not be optimal for San Diego, but here in North Carolina, we get rain 1, maybe 2 days a week. And that water right out of the sky is semi-drinkable in a pinch. you could drink it. But you will get debris off your roof. You will get bugs in it and all that stuff. But you store the water in a water barrel, and then you take water from that water barrel in a pitcher, and you use what's called a gravity filtration system. Over my shoulder, right there, is what a gravity filtration system is. And it's a 2-chamber container. You would pour your dirty water into the top, and then there are ceramic filters, and by gravity, the water goes through the ceramic filters and empties into the lower chamber. Now, this is the Pro Pure 1. You've heard of the Berkey. They're very similar. They can get everything out of water. These filters state that you can take water from a parking lot, in a mall parking lot, put it through there, and it will get rid of 99.999% of all heavy metals, parasites, pharmaceuticals, other toxins, microplastics. So when our water was off, we were drinking our bottled water. We were also filling this and filtering it, and then we would heat it up to take showers, and we would heat it up to wash our dishes. In a pinch, I could drink that and be 100% sure that I'm not going to get sick from rainwater or the lake water or the runoff water in the street.
The filtration system that I bought, it's actually got it the day after going to one of your prepper meetings. And I spent about $300 on a filtration system and an additional $100 worth of filters.
Right.
With the make and model I got, it filters should last about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically have about 2 years worth of water.
Yeah. This one behind me, I have 2 ceramic filters in it. And the more filters you put in, obviously, the longer the lifespan of it's going to be. I think I estimated that one to be about a 2-year filter system by it's a 3-gallon chamber. We probably go through 6 gallons a week drinking out of that one. And the math, 2 years.
And am I correct that I could basically go down to the river and use river water, and it's going to be drinkable?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much anything but the worst brackish water you can probably filter.
So I've actually heard a story of there's a company in San Marcos, California. You came with me to one of the prepper meetings there. It's called Be Ready Incorporated.
Absolutely.
And they have filter systems. I believe it's Sagan is the brand name. Now, he claims to have opened his parents' septic tank, poured water into the filter, and him and his brother drank it. That's how good these filters are. I wouldn't suggest anyone do that, but I mean, you're looking at just about the grossest, nastiest, disease-ridden water one could come across. These water filters behind me, I would 100% guarantee to go down to the local lake or river or stream or saline pool.
How about ocean water?
Ocean water has much too much dissolved minerals in it. It would clog the filters very quickly. Ocean water is a whole different beast when dealing with water. The best way to purify ocean water would be through probably distill it. You can boil it and recatch the fumes in a separate chamber. It's a whole another thing I don't want to go down, but distilling and reverse osmosis.
I know some preppers, the sailing prepping crowd, people who want to live off year round on their sailboat, and they've got little mini gardens up there. They use the distillation process of ocean water when they have to, but it's...
So for those of you who don't know distillation is basically you have a chamber with your bad water. You bring it to a boil. When it evaporates, you put it through copper coils, and when it cools, it recondenses, and you could catch it in a catch system. Now, all of the bad stuff in the water, all of the minerals, all of the junk, all of the salt, all of the soda, everything is left behind. So distilled water is pretty much the purest water that you can get. It has 0 minerals in it. Everything is left behind, basically, and with distillate. Reverse osmosis is a whole different system. It requires a lot of electricity where you're forcing water through different membranes of filters. And that is, again, reverse osmosis is probably the best form of purifying water. But in a grid down situation that we were, no electricity, and it requires a lot of electricity to do it. So like you said, your sailor friends, your boat guys, they're doing the right thing with the distillery.
Yeah, the big downside, of course, is you don't get that much yield.
Yes, it is, and it also takes a lot of energy to do that. So if you're limited on resources, if you don't have the proper fuel, it takes a lot to boil water. And I mean, it takes a lot to get a cup of water, like a measured cup of water, to drinkable. I mean, you're gonna go through a lot of fuel. You'll probably have it on the burners for 15, 18 minutes to get that effect.
Yeah, I know a couple people that've got the fold out solar panels on the boat,
Mhm.
and they use that to drain a charge of battery, and that battery can basically, if it's operating a good 8 to 12 hours a day,
Yeah,
which is all the sunlight you have,
yeah,
you could probably get you probably distill enough water to keep 4 people alive on a daily
yeah.
basis, but that's not very, there's no excess there.
Yeah, another route you can go is there's portable straws. There's straws by Life Straw and a sponsor of mine called Membrane Solutions. Two top manufacturers in basically the filters that are in the straws, similar to this, where you can stick those right into your water source, a river, a lake, and drink.
And that's something you probably always want to keep in your bug out bag, right?
I have them in my truck. I have them in my bug out bag. I do a lot of hiking out here in Asheville, and instead of carrying a heavy water bottle, I will bring the Life Straw or the Membrane Solution straw, and I will just sip right out of the water so that I can, hike with less weight. So they're very versatile. And again, in a situation like this, where stores ran out of water, stores ran out of ice very quickly, people were desperate for water, and being desperate for water will make you drink questionable water, which could get you sick. You throw up, diarrhea, and then you get more dehydrated. So even something as a Life Straw, taking a cup down to your little stream, putting it in and sipping it with your Life Straw could save your life. Water is essential. So number one prep everyone should do, something like that behind me, should be something on your budget to budget for and invest in, because it really, I don't want to overstate it, I don't want to overemphasize it, it will save your life.
All right, you finish up with food or keep going? What else?
Food is pretty simple. Food is, you want to create what's called eventually a working pantry. You want to get your 3 weeks of food. And the way to do that is if you eat pasta once a week, next time you go to the store, get 3 boxes of pasta, throw them in the shelf. You now have a month worth of pasta. If you like cereal in the morning, get some cereal, stock it up. The things you normally eat, non-perishable or non-freezable, you want to stock up on. So say you eat a can of tuna fish every day, or you have tuna fish twice a week for lunch. 2 times 3, 6 cans of tuna. It's not going to set you back. To get 3 weeks of food in your pantries is not going to set you back very financially. Now, once you get 3 weeks, you want to go beyond that and get 3 months, and then 6 months, and then eventually a year. A year is a fantastic goal to reach. I am currently at about a year of food in my house. Water, I have an infinite supply of it because of the rain barrels, as long as we don't go into some crazy drought. But again, I live in an area where it rains quite often. I'm not really worried about, I could go 2 weeks without rain and still have enough water. That's still 110 gallons of water, rainwater that I have. So food is easy. Eat what you store what you eat. First thing to buy is, the last one out. The oldest thing you're going to eat first. Another thing to consider, food's pretty easy. Food's done. Look at a video on my YouTube, and it's basically how to build a food pantry. I even go into how to store raw materials to cook your own food. If you want to make bread, how to store oats, flour, sugar, things like that. Mylar bags and the food saver bags where you suck all the air out and you can put some oxygen tabs in there, and you can keep rice fresh for 50 years in that process.
Yeah,
Also,
I've been over to Bill's old house in San Diego, and he actually had this set of shelves. You enter it from the front and the back, so it was perfect for rotating. I thought it was one of the smartest things I'd ever seen.
You should see those shelves now. There's now 4 of them. But storing the raw materials to also make food, and that's part of prepping too, is to learn how to make bread. How many people know how to boil rice? It's a very simple thing to boil rice, but do you know the ratios? You want to know these things. So when you get when you need these bulk foods that provide a lot of calories, you might be, the last thing you want to stress about is how to make bread when you're hungry. Last thing you want to stress about is, how to cook properly when you're hungry. And you may be in situations where you're doing a lot more manual labor. You might be, God forbid you lose, access to the cars like we did on the streets, and you need to walk somewhere. You're burning a lot of calories. You got to replace those calories with proper nutrition. Another thing that I put together with relation to food is my car bag. So I bought a little cooler, and I have enough food in my car to meet my caloric intake of about 2,700 calories a day, stored in a box half the size of a shoebox. The food quality may not be the best, but it's going to get me home if I need to bug out or bug in or something like that. I'm sorry, not bug out or bug in, but get home from a location if I'm unable to travel by foot or get there. I could be at 300 miles away from my house when an emergency strikes and all things are shut down. Now I need to get home. I need to eat too. So I can spend 3 days in my car with food and water. I keep 3 gallons of water in my car at all times. And that's as simple as putting a jug water in your car. And then every cup holder in your car, you have a little bottle. And that'd be about 3 gallons for most cars.
I've always lived really close to the water, and I know I can always go out and spearfish. I can do that on a daily basis and never starve. There's a lot of people out here listening that are hunters.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Not everybody has that ability to get their own food. Some people are farmers that have their own backyard gardens. Those don't last forever either. Any thoughts on all that?
Gardening is very hard, especially if you're in a seasonal place where I can't garden here in the winter. We have winter here. San Diego has a much larger growing season. Hunting is a thing that a lot of people have a misconception about. Fishing might be different. Hunting, if we're in a situation where there's food that is scarce, you won't be alone in the woods trying to find a deer. I read a book once. It's one of the best prepping books I ever read. It's called Black Autumn. And Angel Studios, are you familiar with them? They're making a movie right now based off that book. It's called The Homestead. And there's a scene in this book where a guy wants to go out and get food for his family because it was basically a nuclear war, blah, blah, blah. The whole entire country shut down and everything is in collapse. And he comes over the ridge with his .308 rifle, and he's looking through the scope, and he's spanning the field, the rocks, and all he sees is hundreds of people doing the exact same thing. So if you are in any area shy of Montana, Wyoming, where there's population is so low, it's going to get hunted out in a matter of days. Every squirrel, every bird, every chipmunk is going to be shot and killed or captured for food. Fishing, that's a little bit different. The ocean is more movement in the ocean. There's more, I think, opportunity to catch fish than there is to shoot deer. The population of deer versus fish, no comparison. So everything that you think of in prepping or in survival, other people have thought of it too. So your ideas about bugging out to the woods and roughing it until the catastrophe is past or you need to hunt, that is some of the hardest living you will ever do. The best thing to do in most situations is to bug in, to have the resources in your house, the food in your house, and the skills to cook and live like you're camping in your house.
Let's talk about defending that then.
Yeah. Defense, unfortunately, would come into play after a period of time. If this tragedy did happen in San Diego, I believe there would have been martial law. I believe there would have been riots, fires, things that this country probably hasn't seen. I mean, look at Katrina. It happened during Katrina. There were riots, there were fires. I believe there may have been some government organizations there disarming citizens. Can you remind me about that? So, yes, there is a reason the Second Amendment was written into our U.S. Constitution, and it was not to hunt and target shoot. When tyranny comes knocking at your door for your weapons,
or anarchy, both.
Yeah, but that's a red line in the that's the line in the sand for a lot of people in the firearms community, because there's not a very good track record of governments confiscating weapons and then what happens next. Any government that wants to confiscate your weapon is not on your side. Defending your home, not necessarily from the government. I hope it never comes to that, but definitely looters. We talked about, your next door neighbor, who's your friend, who you go to church with, all of a sudden has a starving family. You don't know what someone's capable of when they have nothing left to lose. I read a quote once that said the most dangerous thing on the planet is a man with nothing left to lose. You unfortunately may have to defend your home. And that's where community or a MAG group, a mutual assistance group, might come into play if things get really bad. People you can rely on for medical care, for defense, for everything, cooking, carpentry. You need people in your MAG group that you can rely on if things ever get that bad. And on a long enough timeline, everything has a beginning, middle, and end. I talk about this, I've talked about something called the Tytler cycle quite extensively. Hopefully we never experience it, but the Tytler cycle is basically the rise and fall of nations throughout history, and how, even the great Holy Roman Empire had a beginning, middle, and end. And I want you all to Google how the Roman Empire ended. And in America, it's no different. I'll give you the answer. It's from political divide, political corruption, and foreign invaders. America isn't immune from falling. We have much greater infrastructure than any country ever on this planet, but we're not immune from tyranny. We're not immune from foreign invasion. We're not immune from disease. The things that have wiped out civilizations in the past could happen to us. Now, the chances of that happening, who knows? Things can become very hostile very quickly in a country in such a hostile political climate. So firearms are necessary. I would highly advise everyone to, if you've never shot a gun, take a gun lesson, see if firearm ownership is for you, and learn how to shoot. Don't just buy a gun. A lot of training. I am very proficient at rifle, pistol, shotgun, and I still take training. I worked as an armed guard. I know from training that if I need to perform, I will perform flawlessly, because I have rehearsed it so many times at the range in not just shooting paper targets, but 360-degree engagement, where more of a real life shooting scenario with a group of people watching you, which puts the pressure on even higher, because being in a situation where you need to defend yourself, you're not going to function the way you do at the range. So I advise you to desensitize yourself to the bang, to the smell, to the concussion of a gun shooting, because when you pick up that gun, it's not going to be like at the range shooting a paper target. It's going to be much different. So my advice definitely is to train with the weapon you decide to buy. We can get into what weapon is for you, but basically you have three choices: pistol, shotgun, or a high power rifle like the dreaded AR-15.
Don't you recommend one of each at least?
Yeah. My number one video on my YouTube channel is the top 5 guns you should own and why. About 500,000 views right now. It is a very good video if you're new to firearms and what each one's practical uses are. But definitely don't just buy a gun and say, I have a gun now. I mean, it's like buying a sports car and never taking it on the track to see how it responds. You know, you need to train with it. Firearms are definitely a key in prepping. They're down the list of a lot of other things that I would begin with, but they are an essential part of prepping, and I believe an essential part in, well, daily life. You see how crazy it's getting out there. I do carry a weapon everywhere I'm legally able to carry one, concealed when I'm out, as is my family.
Bill, if we're gonna try to hit our target date, we should probably look at wrapping it up. Do you want to nail off just big picture, like 3 or 4 more things people should look at for prepping? And let's not give it all away. Let's make them go to your channel to get the rest.
Another thing that you could do for prepping practice is to create a blackout kit. This I would recommend to involve your kids in if you have a family, because it could get their minds thinking about prepping from a non-threatening way. You don't want to tell your kids, hey, we need to buy guns because Joey's father might kick in our door tomorrow if we run out of water. You could say, all right, kids, remember the blackout that we had yesterday? Well, you guys looked bored, you didn't have your tablets, you didn't have your video games or whatever. So let's put together a blackout kit. What's the first thing we need in a blackout? And you can play a game with them. You want flashlights, you want candles, maybe the glow sticks. Glow sticks are fun for kids. Next, what? Games, games and books, things that will pass the boredom. Also, preparing a blackout kit will get you better prepared for a long-term blackout like we just experienced, because once you go beyond candles and flashlights, you got to think of batteries, how to charge these. If you're using a lantern, do you have enough fuel for it? So you can expand the blackout kit into your fuel sources for powering these things. That would be a great way to go about another area of prepping. Create a blackout kit. You also want to think about safety. Do you have fire extinguishers in your house? A lot of people, you don't think about it until it's too late. It's always easy to Monday morning quarterback the event the day before. But if you're in the kitchen and you have that event where you have a fire, we got a fire extinguisher right on top of the refrigerator. How many people have a fire extinguisher in their home? Think about safety. You can think about medical. If you are on prescription medication, do you have at least a month's supply? There's ways to ask your doctor to get a little bit of an extended supply. There's also ways to fill your prescription a week early every month legally. And after 4 months, you have a month.
I just buy 90-day supply, and then
right.
When it gets down to 30, you renew it.
There you go. So you want to think about medical. You want to think about having a medical bag in your house or medical supplies in your house. Like, do you have enough cough medicine? Do you have enough this? I remember during COVID, you couldn't go into any pharmacy and find any cough medicine, any cough syrup, any kind of nasal decongestion. Tylenol was out. So the shelf lives on pressed pills and capsule pills are long enough to where you can spend a little bit of money and just put backups of what you normally need for any kind of ailment in a little area, cabinet. You can make a little prepping cabinet. You can have your food there, your water there, your medical there, your blackout kit there. I would suggest locking your firearms up, but that's just another aspect of prepping is medical. Another thing that you want to think about with prepping is, are you putting off surgeries? Are you putting off the dentist? Are you putting off getting something checked out that right now could be so easy to do, but next week when it's raining 25 inches and everything's shut down for a week, all of a sudden that cavity that you ignored becomes infected and turns into a root canal. Also, getting in shape. Being in shape to walk. Being in shape to lift things. You got to take care of your health. You got to take care of your medical and your health. They go hand in hand. And a lot of prepping that I do is role-playing, doomsdaying. You got to get your mind prepared too. Because when you're in a very stressful situation, I've had 15 people over the past week tell me that they've been having panic attacks because of the stress. Now, you can role-play. You can doomsday. You can wrap your head around, okay, and I like to use this example, getting a flat tire on the freeway. You're doing 80 miles an hour in the fast lane. and all of a sudden you have a blowout. A lot of people would panic. Now, next time you're on the freeway, role play in your head, hey, I'm going 70 miles an hour right now. What would I do if I just had my tire blow out? My car would jerk around. I might panic. But if you think about the steps, you know what? I'm going to ease off the gas. I'm going to put my signal on. I'm going to try to get all the way over to the side and pull off in a safe area. Running through that in your head is like actually doing it. So when you do have that blowout, you go back to that training saying, stay calm, blinker, check your mirrors, check your blind spot, slowly get over, don't panic, park safely.
Yeah,
and that goes
yeah, it's exactly like how I used to prep for sports or sporting events. You'd visualize the game before it ever happened. You'd visualize the situation. You're preparing to give a presentation. You're going to practice it.
Yeah.
Go in cold turkey saying, I'll figure it out when I get there.
Yeah. So I like to call it my triangle of prepping, and part of it's mental, physical, and your actual preps. You got to have the gear, you got to have the skills, but you also, I mean, people always ignore. For example, I told you yesterday that I saw some pretty gruesome stuff at work. I've never been experienced to that. I've seen dead bodies before, but not in this state. I've seen car accidents. I've done ride-alongs with my ex on the police department, and we responded to death calls. They look like they're sleeping. I had no idea how I was going to respond to seeing something that was very, very gruesome. The smell, the sight, and I thought of that. When I got there yesterday, my boss said, we're going to just throw you to the wolves. We're going to tell you about what's going on. There's bodies here. And I said, oh boy, how am I going to react to this? And I said, okay, it's a human being. It's not feeling anymore. It's not, it's very sad, but I had to kind of remove myself from it. And that 2 minutes of preparation I had riding over there in the little off-road vehicle, I think I wrapped my head around it a little bit more. You can mentally prepare for just about everything in life. And if you mentally prepare, I want to get into a little bit of, I study Stoic philosophy. I love reading the Stoics. And we do not have the ability to control everything what happens to us, whether it's death of a family member, a storm like we just experienced, a flat tire, losing your job. The only power we have is how we react to it. So what you want to give something, your reaction could be negative, or you could view everything as an opportunity to help overcome the obstacle. There's a book I just read called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's about seeing good in bad, or seeing good in catastrophe, and only allowing yourself positive reactions. Now, I would love to end with this, because this event that I just lived through showed me how my preps fell perfectly into place, or almost perfectly into place. And I was given the opportunity, so to speak, as like a dry run for something worse. And this has better prepared me going through these past 9 days, knowing how I would react, knowing what to expect, knowing what preps I might need to step up a little bit. So I try to view everything as an opportunity to grow and expand and gain more knowledge. And you could view that in every aspect of your life. You got fired from a job, you could say, woe is me, or you can say, now I have the opportunity to move on to maybe something better. It's all how you view it. And I view this as a very positive experience personally for me, because it's going to help me grow as a prepper and as a human. And it's even given me the opportunity to have more compassion towards people, because it affected people I know personally. And, you could be a schadenfreude and kind of laugh from a distance at people when they're going through tragedy, or, not care. But seeing it firsthand, it hits home, and it's given me that opportunity to find more compassion for my fellow human beings.
Very good. Bill, thanks for coming on. We've been talking about doing this for quite some time.
Yeah, we have.
And now we had to wait for a national disaster to.
Yeah, we did. But let's do it again, because I mean, I could talk about any topic of prepping I touched on. I could talk for hours on. You know that I have presentations for 10 minutes or 2 hours.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely do just one based on prepping only. We'll see. Hey, people watching, leave your questions or comments in the section of Rumble down there. We'll get back to you. And if you have any ideas for what you'd like to Bill to go into more detail next time he's on my channel, put it there and we'll get back to you. Bill.
All right, and everyone, give me a follow on YouTube. It's Community Prepper. I'm also on Instagram, Community Prepper. It's not as widely used, but YouTube is my main channel that I get all this stuff out to, and I have videos upon videos upon videos about everything we discussed today.
And I'll have the links in the description no matter where you're watching this video. Bill.
Thanks, Brady.
Thanks a lot, brother. We'll see you soon.
Awesome, man. Good seeing you.